So let's look at some interactivity to your website. Here we see a screen to generate statistics for a role-playing game. We have 6 ability scores, and you see boxes here for scores. And we're also going to show what the modifier for those scores are. And you'll see that for the interactivity, I have a button here called Roll. And if I click on Roll, it'll generate some stats on the screen. Those are randomly generated numbers, and it will show what that modifier is. These are based on the D20 standard. And if I click again, you'll see that I have some various roles here. So we're going to look at how to build this interface. The first thing we want to do is look at the basic HTML. So here I have the basic HTML. Now the HTML I have here does not have the script embedded yet. We're going to work through adding that in. So you'll see it's a basic HTML page. I have the script defined in the head. That's where we're going to be implementing it. And for the body of our document, all we have is the table here. And just generate the table as you will. Now, one of the things I do want you to see is the table data item that we're going to modify. This table, this data right here, is where the stat for strength is going to go. And this one here is the stat for intelligence. So what you'll see I've done is in the TD tag, I've added an attribute for the ID, and I've set the ID to be the first 3 letters of the attribute that we're modifying. So that's how we're going to access it. And the way I want you to think about it is we need to get the element we want to change by its ID. So you're going to get the element by ID. You're going to get the element by ID. And that's going to let us target that specific tag to put stuff inside of its HTML, the inner HTML for that tag. So each one of my stats does have its stat tag labeled with the first 3 letters. So that's how we're going to change the HTML for that. Now to set this up, we do need a button. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a button. To create that button, we're going to put in an input tag. So we'll put our input in, and this input, this is going to be the roll button. And the type of input, this is a button. And then the value, this is the text that goes on the button itself. So I'm going to put the word roll on there because that's what we want the button to do. And then the handler, when we click on it, we want it to call a function. We'll call the function generate. Okay. So that's my button. Let's go check it real quick, make sure that my button shows up. And there's my button. Now right now it's not going to do anything because I actually haven't created anything for it yet. But if we do open up the inspection window on here, you do that by either in Google Chrome, you press Ctrl-Shift-I, or you can go to inspect. And that brings up this. And if you go to console, you'll see that an error was generated. It says generate has not been defined yet. So we actually need to go put in the script to define what generate does. So let's go look at that real quick. All right, close that window. And at the top of the file, I'm going to go into the script, and let's go ahead and create that function. In JavaScript, you create a function by typing the word function. And when I think about functions, I think back to my math class when we talked about f of x. F is a function, x is a variable we're working on. Now, the function that we're going to write, called generate, is just like the f of x. Generate would be my f, and then the x, we don't actually have any information to give the function, so we're going to leave that blank. So this is my generate function. Okay, and then what I want to do in here is I want to go ahead and create my stats. So let's begin with the first stat, and the first stat is going to be strength. So the way we do this is we need to specify where do we want to input the number. So that's we access the document, and this is part of what's called the document object model. If you do some research on this, you'll find that there's a hierarchy that we can pull up, and the entire page is called the document. And then from the document, we want to, again, get the element by ID. Make sure you capitalize the first letter of all but the first word, and everything else is lowercase. And the ID that we're going to looking for first is str for our strength. And what we want to do when we have that ID is we want to set the inner HTML to a value. So in this case, we want to generate a stat. So let's just say right now we rolled a perfect stat. So I'm going to put 18 as my number. And we're going to see how to randomly generate it here in a moment. But let's go ahead and test that and see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to reload my page and roll, and you'll see my strength is now 18. But what we really want to do is we want to roll that. So I'm going to create another function specifically for rolling dice. And in this, what I want to do is I want to roll 3 dice, and we'll do this way. I'm going to create a variable called die1 for my first dice, and I want this to generate a random number. So I'm going to use math.random. Now, when I use the random function in JavaScript, it's going to generate a number between 0 and 1. That means that the number is going to be a fractional value, so it'd be like 0.3 or 0.865. Now, that doesn't sound very useful, but it turns out that if I multiply it by a number, I'm going to get a range. So if you think about the range on this, if I multiply, let's say 6, if I multiply 0 by 6, I'm going to get 0. And if I multiply 1 by 6, I'm going to get 6. So I'm going to get a number in the range 0 to 6. Now, one of the things to our benefit is that the random number will never return 1. It'll return 0 through 0.9999. So we never actually get the number 6. We get 0 through 5. And so if we remove the fractional portion, we're guaranteed to get 0 through 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if we shift these up by 1 by adding 1, then we'll get the range 1 through 6. So I want to multiply this by 6. That's going to give me my 0 through 5. And then I want to add 1. That makes it 1 through 6. Now, unfortunately, this number is a fractional value. In fact, let me go ahead and show that to you. And we'll set this to be our roll. And when I run this, you'll see that I get a very large fractional value. So we need to truncate that and do all 3 of our dice rolls. So to truncate it, we're going to use a math function called floor. There's 2 of them, floor and ceiling, and what they do is they round. Math.floor rounds down, math.ceiling rounds up. Okay, so that's how we do that. And then I want to copy and paste this. So I have 3 dice. So that's dice 2 and dice 3. I'm going to sum these up and return them. So die 2 plus die 3. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Let's go ahead and load our web page. Okay, now you'll see that I get numbers in the range of 3 to 18. So that's 1 plus 1 plus 1 all the way through 6 plus 6 plus 6. So I can generate any variance of those values. But I'm only doing it for strength right now. So let's look at doing it for all 6 attributes. So that's just as simple as doing each element. So I'm going to copy my get element by ID, paste it 6 times, and change each one to its individual element. So I will also have my intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. So now that I have all of them there, let's look at this and you'll see I get all of the pieces. Okay, in the next video we're going to look at how to do the color coding as well as adding the modifier.